Hey, hello everyone. It's been a while since I've actually uploaded anything, but there's been a reveal. I want to kind of talk about that in a bit, but while I'm at it, I'll just gloss over these other reveals. But basically, they've been revealing quite a handful for one-off cards, and I've noticed like so much talk around them. Bit overrated, to be honest, for a discussion. I think there's like some other interesting cards people aren't talking about quite as much that have been revealed, such as the promos. But anyway, over triggers. There's one here, additional effect, choose one of your stand rear guard, and it gets the end of battle skill when attacked. You can basically stand it once per turn. So you can basically now make any deck aggressive just by sacking the one off OT. Good skillful ability. And if you did not choose a card, you can draw and call up to one unit from your hand to rear guard circle. So in a way you can get a multi-attack of that as well. It's quite nice for Oracle Think Tank, of course, because Oracle Think Tank can kind of hit triggers a bit more easily. I mean, imagine using this with Cubic Magus or something. You attack 3 times in Magus, or you could use it with like Seer Yggdrasil in the Minerva turn, where you have like the 3 attacks already. Why not make it 4 attacks at 100 million? Definitely deserve to win. So next is Forbidal Surrogate. Its ability is search a deck for or drop for up to a total of 2 different grade 3 or 4 unit cards and reveal them. Call all revealed grade 3 cards and put all revealed grade 4 cards into hand. You may also search for only 1 card. So this is quite useful, well, quite good in Bastion in general, of course, but also quite good for grade 4 decks. So the one Regalis piece we had was more so for Persona Ride. And now we've got something that can help grade 4 decks a bit because you've basically added some more consistency to it. But also, if you're playing decks with just some good rear guards as well, it's good for that as well if you want to call some grade 3s off it. But obviously, it doesn't really help Persona Ride because it is forcing them to be called to rear. Unless you're playing something like Yuika in Lyrical Monasterio, for example. That's probably the only card I remember, actually, because I play it in Premium, so that's just the first thing that comes into my head. But I think Kyrie can sort of do something with that as well. So, but then again, Kyrie is a grade 4 as well, so maybe you wouldn't necessarily add grade 3 Kyries. But anything that bounces can obviously make use of this. In Premium, there are some decks which don't mind the Saki one-offs because they're not really Saki if you can search them out of your deck with any sort of Foolish Burials, Style Skills in Grand Blue. You can probably reach them back into your hand. Or you could do something like Great Nature. They have Mikasaburo. You can just search for any grade 3 in the turn that's retired. So Great Nature is a very good clan to use with it. So yeah, that's the second Regalis piece. Now onto the other ones. Well, the next Overtrigger even. This one here, Spiritual King of Waterworld, Idosfaro. Additional effect, choose a card from your drop, add it to your hand. So basically, you have a Greed Shade when you attack. We've just had one of these in Cat Sanctuary recently, actually. Choose one for your units, and it gains critical until end of turn. So you can basically add a bit of crit pressure as well. It's a little bit like the Brandgate one in a way, or the Stoicheo one. Just for the whole crit thing, obviously. But you are also plussing, adding more to hand, and it's more selective as well from your drop zone. I mean, I can't really get hyped with these over triggers. They are just luck-based cards. You're not really doing anything strategic with them. So just moving on. It's a whatever reveal. Next, Regalis piece. So this one's a little bit more interesting. Soul Blast 1 to play. Choose one of your units. It gains 25k shield for the battle, and then you can choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets the ability until end of turn, where all of your opponent's units with 100 million or more power get -1 critical. To be honest, I like the first skill. That's the bit I care about. It's just the fact that you're playing an extra heavy shield in any deck. Obviously, though, it is a generic card as well. So the Regalis pieces, they're like one-offs that you just play, but you can only choose one anyway, thankfully, because I think if you could just play as many of these as one-offs, then deck building would be incredibly boring. So at least you're choosing between all these Regalis pieces. And the 25k shield, it's not a PG in case of the OT, but it's got the ability where you're able to kind of combat the OT now. So in a way, think of this as like a 5th card to play. That's basically a perfect card against overtriggers. So it's quite nice for that as well, because sometimes you just don't draw into enough defensive cards. So that helps. And notably, it's got Soul Blast 1 cost. As a Genesis player, I kind of just pay attention to anything that has Soul Blast while guarding, because you could use it with suddenly forgetting its name now, Ravens, Kamal. So with that, you can basically just call it Intercept for CP1 if you're ever short on 5k shield. Also in Premium, you could always just use it with like Ackley's or the Old Norn to just give your Vanguard 5k power, which you could do with Verachum already anyway in Secret LC. So it's kind of just something for me to kind of pay attention to as a Genesis player as well. And the other thing as well, it's searchable, just as I mentioned with the other Regalis piece. So that can be handy. One thing I do kind of want to highlight though is that with Regalis pieces, so recently we've been getting these mask decks, and also like second persona rides becoming a bit more common. So one of the deck problems that you get is that you've got a boss card and you have to rewrite that boss card for your deck to actually keep up. That's just something I've kind of noticed more and more because I've played Hexorb, and when I can't rewrite Hexorb, the deck is kind of like really iffy. But obviously they gave us support, which is Totris to search, but if you drive check to Totris, then you can't call the Totris to search a Hexorb, so there's always been a bit of an issue with that. But we're getting like a new Hexorb now, so basically we can just drive check into the other Hexorb, and we'd still be able to Persona Ride in the next turn. And obviously Mask decks, they also get to extend their Persona Rides. And Grade 4s, one of the reasons why Grade 4 decks have been good is because they're consistent as well, in that if you can play into both a Persona Ride or a Persona Ride or a Grade 4 Ride playstyle, then it's kind of, it makes the deck more consistent. So right now I've been playing with the Minerva deck, and what I've noticed is that I really need the original Regalis piece, I can't remember what it's called, the Gratis Grelade or something, the cup that Persona Rides. So I've been needing that card in that deck specifically, because when that deck doesn't Persona Ride, and I went into Springfest recently and had a few games go really bad because I couldn't Persona Ride. So, and that's while going first as well, which kind of added more to it because the deck kind of doesn't do very well going first compared to second. So I think decks like that are probably going to lose some favor, and they won't have the benefit of actually being able to consider cards like this. So in a deck like Minerva, I wouldn't really consider the other order that was revealed, but I would consider this card. I would love to play this card, but I don't think I would be able to in the Minerva deck because I'm so desperate to Persona Ride. So it's a really tough choice, but I think if I was playing, for example, Hexorb, the new one with the old one, I would be more inclined to play this card. This card would be very easy for me to justify. So that's just something else I kind of notice, is that with Regalis pieces, there might be some that you'd rather play than others, but then you're kind of restrained because of the consistency of your own deck. Because the idea of like a couple of these other Regalis pieces is to help improve consistency as well. And this card isn't really a consistency card, but it's more like a buff in terms of defense and things. And getting rid of like, well, tackling better the bane of everyone's game, which is the overtrigger. So that's just kind of like some thoughts on this card that I've got. I just kind of want to talk about. To be honest, this is kind of a more interesting point compared to the rest of the stuff earlier on this video. But now on to the main purpose of the video, or rather one of two purposes. So the Genesis PR. So there's actually a Power Moon one as well. I'm not really showing it in this video. I didn't really plan to, but it's an interesting promo for any Power Moon players out there. And in fact, you can actually make use of it with the Regalis pieces because they're grade 3s, and you can now search for grade 3s and put them into your soul. Or something. I don't really understand Power Moon too well, but Lillian, in theory, you could use Lillian to add cards from your soul to hand. So if there's a way for you to use the new promo to soul charge grade 3s, then you can basically use Lillian to add the grade 3 to hand. This Genesis card, when placed on rearguard, if you have a Vanguard whose only clan is Genesis, you look at top 3 of your deck and you choose up to 1 and put it into your soul, and you stack the rest of the bottom of the deck. So it's a bit like Melissa and Kamal, but thankfully we're not wasting time shuffling the deck. So if any of you have been playing Minerva, you may notice that you've had instances where you feel like you're just wasting time in games, just shuffling your deck because you use Kybre or you use Drilling Angel, and then it's like, okay, Drilling Angel, check top 3, and then shuffle them back into deck or something like that. So it's kind of been a bit annoying, to be honest. So the fact that they've actually added the stack to bottom, just like some of the older cards back in the day, like Gold Paladins, a lot of Gold Paladin has returned to bottom. Although when I see people like accidentally shuffle the deck, it's a bit scary. had an experience like that before where someone shuffled the deck in a shop challenge. But yeah, I just like that for me, just to save more time playing in tournaments and things. And then the skill itself is very similar to Bliss and Camar because it's not checking top 5, it's only checking top 3, but the fact that you can actually search again and just look for something to put to sort, and you're compressing the deck even more so it becomes more trigger heavy, is very useful. Now the second skill then about it attacks, if you have a Minerva Vanguard, so you have to use this from turn 3 onwards, you can basically Soul Blast this card, and then what happens is that you Soul Charge a card from your hand or drop, and then if you do it from hand, you draw 1. So basically, you're losing this card regardless, so it is a bit of a neg in that respect. And obviously, it doesn't feel like a neg if you end up calling Camar over it, because you do find sometimes in Genesis, you do just call over cards, Minerva specifically, D-Series Minerva, or even Witches, just a Witch playstyle, to be fair. And obviously, that's kind of a neg, but now it's like the retire itself bit doesn't really matter as a cost if you're going to call over anyway. Obviously, then what you can do is that you're able to then draw and filter your deck by 1 card. So that might help you find Persona Ride cards, or it could help you find a Perfect Guard so you can defend yourself better. And the other thing as well is that because you can now Soul Charge from hand, which we couldn't do before, that gives you more flexibility with Melissa and Kalmar as well. So if you happen to have them in your hand, instead of just dumping them as vanilla cards to multi-attack with and call over later, now it just kind of feels like, it doesn't feel as bad having them in hand. So, and you're not forcing yourself to play like Rubinia or something, which is makes it even better. So, which I don't think, I'm pretty sure most people don't play Rubinia, but I think I've heard that there are people out there that do. But that's like, I think one of the few ways you could ever do that sort of thing, Soul Charge a Witch from hand. Generally, Drilling Angel is what people use, but the thing is with Drilling Angel, obviously you have to retire the card, so you have to call it and then call over or something, or you just discard your ride line as well, which is the early game timing. So I'm pretty excited for this because this card, it kind of compresses Cadwala in a way and Drilling Angel into one skill. And to be honest, I do want a way of just being able to filter through my deck more and potentially even find stuff like Kybre or whatever insert draw card that there is, or +1 card. So I do like that as well. And I think, like I've been doing some experimental deck building with Regalis, believe it or not. And I just find that at the moment, running 4 Kybre just feels really bad because, or like 4 orders that draw, anything like that, right? Anything that draws as a 4 slot, which is typically what you see in like every list. I feel like the problem is when you get those games where you don't draw those cards, especially in the early game, even more when going first, I find that things just go really wrong. So now it's kind of nice that you can just not play Drilling Angel anymore, because Drilling Angel doesn't really help you fix hand or anything. It doesn't help you filter the deck. So you could basically replace it with this, and at least you've got something here that can sort of help you filter your deck, just to draw into stuff, because Minerva hasn't really got very good draw power. So this is very helpful, and I think it does help to compress some of the, like, when you don't have enough space to run all these cards, but you've now got something where you kind of can at least merge 2 skills somewhat together into 1 card to save space, while then be able to maintain the space to play other cards. So that's kind of like the strength of this promo. That's what makes it good. Now, it's not a Genesis card, that's the only downside. And obviously, though, the thing is, I kind of partially like the fact it's not Genesis, just because I don't really like the look of encounter cards as much as the normal cards. So that's kind of the only thing, just the aesthetic side. But otherwise, I think obviously the Genesis clan would be useful, because the deck does sometimes have issues with the Sky Genesis. And that's another thing, by the way. That's another reason why I think filter and draw power is important, is because finding Genesis cards to, not just to Persona Ride and to guard, but also just be able to discard a Genesis card as well. Because sometimes you do run into those turns where it's like, oh, hold on a second, I can't do the restand. Whoops. So you gotta be careful of that. Now, on to the next thing. So it's in Japanese, but basically there's a translation on the side here. So History Collection is going to be getting revealed soon, and there's 3 Kree Elementals that are getting updated and reprinted. So they're going to errata 3 Kree Elementals. So that's interesting because I kind of gave up on the hope, unfortunately, when they revealed the G stuff, right? The critical triggers and the strides. I was convinced that, okay, it looks like they're just going to follow what they did with V series when they made the starters and gave them quick shields, where they're just going to be like blanket erratas on like one representative of each clan. I thought they're just going to make a very simple errata and just leave it at that. But now that we know that there's going to be some bespoke erratas with the 3 different elementals, that kind of opens up some hopes again, because one of the things I was hoping for in History Collection, until I kind of just gave up on it, was that they would use History Collection as a chance to take stuff off of the restriction list. So there are some strange things. Let's just say, like there have been a few cards that end up on the restriction list that should never be there, because they've designed the clans way too much, or the decks way too much, around those cards, to the point that it became so integral. Obviously, example, and people who would know me would be, of course, Genesis. Right now, the only premium deck you see is Regalia for a reason, and if you try to build something that's not Regalia, it feels kind of out of place, let's just say. So I think there's opportunities to decide on cards to errata, and therefore be able to justify taking stuff off restriction lists. I think even looking back at, say, at Premium Collection, there's been a few banned strides. I hope there's a chance we can see Gas still come off the restriction list, especially for Notto's sake, because I think Gas still, it's a very interesting card, and I'm kind of sick of seeing No Life King everywhere, so I hope they do something to kind of free Gas still, just to kind of rebalance it, let's just say, so that it's not like dominating the clan either like it did before. Ichikishima would be nice to see back. To be honest, I have mixed feelings about Ichikishima, because I never liked the fact that there was like 4 copies of it, and you'd play like 4 copies of the previous Ichikishima, which was basically like half your G zone was Ichikishima, and it's just like, guys, there's like other iconic cards besides, and Ichikishima isn't even that iconic in terms of anime and things, because Ichikishima has never been in the anime. I would have liked Taki Mikazuchi to be in that Premium Collection 2019. But for some reason they just spammed the same artwork from last time, or spammed the same character even, which was the only clan that did that actually, which was kind of sad. Whereas Spearcross, we've had Raphael, Mitra. They're based on early G era bosses for the respective clans, which was nice. So I'm kind of hoping they just do something with Ichikishima so that I can at least have that G zone skill back. I really want to be able to have be able to count the G zone as my hand, and I guess have like an Oracle stride as well. That's pretty decent to go into first stride. So there's that as well. So there's some excitement if they do errata other cards and free them from restriction list. Yu-Gi-Oh has done this, by the way. I found out about that like a while ago, where basically Yu-Gi-Oh has gone back and revised card abilities, and then basically freed up the restriction list so it doesn't become so cluttered up, which is pretty good. It's somewhat pro-consumer in a way, because at least now you're telling the players their cards aren't useless, they can use them in events, and that's kind of good. That's kind of like why I like History Collection, because it's very it's like trying to do something to just improve the quality of life of the players as well. That's what the intention feels like with this set, so I'm quite a fan of it. Now, I want to speculate. I want to take this chance to speculate what the 3 elementals are that I personally think will be errated, and I'll go through them right now. So, the first one, Tempest Sphere. So, Tempest Sphere is banned right now, and in fact, the second one is also banned, which is Zazen. I think these 2 cards will get errated and freed from the restriction list. So, right now, if you think about it, History Collection, we have basically all these new strides that can basically give you Generation Break while your opponent's on grade 2, and obviously gift markers as well, which is an important bit. It's the fact that you're getting the Generation Break. So just one angle of it, there could be a number of theories on how they'll errata these, but maybe they'll make it so that you would have to be on grade 3 plus, like grade 3 or higher. That's one possibility, because if you do it like that, then at least it doesn't really feel any different to the History Collection strides in some ways, or most ways even. Maybe there's a few little bits of oversight that I'm not aware of. To be fair, I'd have to analyze an entire card pool in great depth. I don't have the time or the capacity to do that. But that's one of my theories, is that maybe they'll just require like both Zaz and Temposphere for you to be on grade 3, because I think the big thing was as well is that people did have to you'd have to have used them. Well, if you could use them early game, then you could do like various things like the Magic Click Amaterasu. You could do Time Leap, and so on. So I think that's what they're going to revise. Like, just figure out how they can nerf them so that they're not like stealing games easily, as well. And with that, I kind of hope at least my box of Zarzans, because I've got so many of this card, and I've got loads of Tempospheres as well. I just hope then that these actually become tradable again, which is nice. Again, pro-consumer, because I feel like I just lost like so much value from that ban. So it's pretty good if they do that, which I think they will. I'm quite convinced, because I can't figure out why you'd want to errata in the other Cray Elementals. I just don't see the need to. These are the only 2 Cray Elementals that definitely I feel are worth errataing. And then the next thing I want to talk about, the third one, is Cyclone. So this is probably an obvious one. So the reason why I think Cyclone will get errata is because Katrina just came off the restriction list. And obviously with Katrina, you can flip Cyclone and gain more power, but it also means now Neo Nectar will just be using this so much. And in fact, it might even warp the secondary market a bit, because if they make Zarzan and Temposphere playable again, and vanilla decks actually end up being something people might try to collect, because remember, these are generic cards, so everyone can play these cards, right? And so that'll increase demand for these cards, just like it did previously before the ban. And if the demand goes up, then obviously Neo Nectar players are going to want Cyclones, and so will vanilla players. So there is an opportunity to kind of like avoid that kind of Dual Knight Sword Me problem, which we used to have. If you guys remember, Royal Paladins, everyone was playing Sword Me. Sanctuary Guard, Think Saver players, when it was supposed to be for Dual Knight players who basically struggled to get hold of their Sword Me's. So you basically built like a cheap Dual Knight deck, but the next thing you know, you're spending a fortune on the Sword Me's, or you just don't find any supply. And it was a horrible time in Jira for Dual Knight players. So I think they'll probably errata this. Maybe specify that tokens can't get the power or something like that. That's it, really. Be similar to like the Astral Plane errata, which, by the way, maybe they'll reprint the Astral Plane. Or was it Valkyrian? I think it was Valkyrian that got errated. So yeah, that's basically what I want to talk about today. I want to see what you guys think, though. Let me know in the comments below. Do you think these are like good guesses, or do you think there's some other like very likely ones that I'm overlooking that could actually get an errata as well? And let me know what you think about the Genesis promo, because I'm really hyped for that, and I just hope it's not too hard to get. I do want to get the foil one, so yeah, that's pretty much it for today. Until then, I'll see you guys later. Bye.